Why did Jedi Grandmaster Satele Shan insist on using a double-bladed lightsaber originally invented by the Jedi's ancient and dark enemy, the Sith? The Jedi's history with the Saber Staff is rocky to say the least. It has been a weapon that was largely frowned upon by the Jedi Order from the very moment that it was created, with the Jedi holding this distrust and even disdain all the way to the era of the Clone War. Throughout its long lifetime, the Saber Staff remained a relatively obscure weapon, even when it was popular among Jedi and Sith during the Great Galactic War. The most prominent Jedi in history mostly wielded single blades, as the traditional variant remained the most preferred version amongst most duelists. Yet, the Jedi Grandmaster of the Great Galactic War, Satele Shan, insisted on using a double-bladed lightsaber and a Saber Staff, no matter how many times she had to reconstruct it. As one of the most significant Jedi in all of the lore, we wanted to sit down and analyze the reason behind the Jedi Order's discouragement of the Saber Staff, and conversely, Satele Shan's stubborn choice to stick with the weapon. To understand why traditionally the Jedi disliked the staff, we'll have to start at the beginning. The double-bladed lightsaber was originally known as the Sith Lightsaber, and for very good reason. The double saber takes its origins from the ancient Sith Lords, and the weapon was developed completely separate from the Jedi Order, making its design and specifications completely Sith in origin. Most, including our own researchers here in the archives, believe that the creator of the double saber was Exar Kun. However, this actually isn't entirely true. After some careful research, we have discovered that Exar Kun was the man who brought the double saber into the public eye and gave it the infamous reputation that it would carry. In actuality though, Exar based his double saber design off of schematics from a Sith holocron that he found and studied. The true origins of this weapon come from the ancient Sith Lords of Korriban, coincidentally, the leading designers of the modern lightsaber. The Jedi weren't the ones who developed the lightsaber as we know it today, mostly because they were still using proto-sabers in this era. It was during the 100-Year Darkness following the Second Great Schism that the Dark Jedi developed advanced lightsaber technology. The Jedi were still using the archaic proto-sabers until the era of the Great Hyperspace War, which of course was led by Naga Sadow. During the time between the ending of the 100-Year Darkness and the return of the Sith, the ancient Sith Lords perfected lightsaber technology, and even went on to create more advanced variants, which where we get to the Saber Staff. The Jedi don't want to admit it or speak of it often, but the Sith were the true pioneers of the ancient and sacred blade. Importantly though, it would be Exar Kun who would reveal the Saber Staff, where the Jedi would see the weapon for the first time, as the Sith Lords mostly used the weapon amongst themselves. Following Exar's death, the double saber would largely remain in obscurity, and its design was synonymous with death and the return of the Sith. Still though, there were some brave Jedi who wanted to study the design and were fascinated with its construction. We would later see the rise of double sabers again during the Jedi Civil War, which was started by the Jedi Revan. At this point, the Saber Staff was heavily frowned upon by the older members of the Jedi, still seeing it as a tool for death and the dark side. And to be fair, they were correct. The double-bladed lightsaber was inherently an aggressive weapon. The two blades were designed to offer more attacks per swing, and providing a larger margin for damage to be dealt on an opponent. Unlike normal lightsabers, which had many uses as both a weapon for defense and a tool to build, the double-bladed lightsaber was made exclusively for combat. This was something that the Jedi discouraged, and they didn't want the lightsaber to be seen as a symbol of death, but rather a symbol of hope and peace, of order. But that didn't stop young Jedi in this new generation from building their own saber staffs. In fact, one of the Jedi Order's finest, Bastila Shan, an ancestor of Satele, wielded a yellow saber staff during her time. But now we move on to Satele Shan's lightsaber, and what made this saber staff particularly interesting. During her time as an apprentice and Jedi Knight, Satele Shan shared something with her ancestors: a fiery spirit, a power, and a passion for justice. Satele belonged to one of the most powerful bloodlines in all of Star Wars history, that being the bloodline of Revan and Bastila. Satele Shan was born with an aggressive nature. This, combined with her innate power in the Force, gave cause for worry among the Jedi Council, who would issue her to be trained in the Outer Rim, sent away from the temple by one of the Order's Battlemasters, a Jedi by the name of Kau Derek. For a brief reminder, a Battlemaster was considered one of the greatest duelists of the entire Jedi Order, and was denoted for their skill and mastery of all 7 forms of lightsaber combat. They were also one of the rare Jedi permitted to study Form 7, the Forbidden Form, in Juya. Satele was sent to the Battlemaster, who understood her nature in a way no one else did, and because of this, Derek actually was the one who encouraged her to construct and wield a Saber Staff. His line of thinking was that this was a violent weapon, and Satele would be able to tame her aggressive nature through it, not shying away from her more violent half, but rather the weapon being a teacher in itself. Passion, tempered properly, would not usurp her undying compassion for others. Satele desperately wanted to make things better for the galaxy, and to do that, she was willing to lay everything on the line. Because of this, her master was able to teach her how to channel her ferocious spirit into the lightsaber, making it an outlet for compassion when teaching the Jedi. This falls in line with the Jedi philosophy of Form 5 Gem So, the dueling variant, which was meant for users of strong builds. Form 5 was developed to allow wielders to use their physical might in combat to batter down an opponent's defenses. It is the most aggressive and physically taxing of all the lightsaber forms permitted by use for the Jedi. However, it was wielded by some of the greatest Jedi that have ever lived, including Anakin and Luke Skywalker. This was due to the way the Jedi taught the use of this form. They instructed those that decided to practice it to use compassion. The main reason was, as a Jedi, one would naturally want to end the fight quickly while causing as little harm as possible. If you were to, say, overwhelm your opponent right at the beginning and beat their defenses to a pulp, disarming them in a matter of seconds, they would lose the fight and surrender, using aggression to fuel compassion. This is why Satele would also use the dual-bladed lightsaber. And the proof that Derek's understanding of the Padawan is clear is shown how the two of them interact. Satele has a fierce devotion, loyalty, and respect to her master, and her master listens to his Padawan's intuition, having faith in her capabilities, and trusting her when she says that she feels something is wrong. With Derek and Satele Shan, something very rare and exceptional has happened within the lore. They are the perfect master and apprentice duo. And because of that, Satele Shan excelled in power to the point where she became Grandmaster. Her understanding of the blade and the Force itself, ushering her forward into a new era. Satele Shan would be one of the most powerful Jedi Grandmasters in all of the lore. We would later learn that Derek also had a familiarity with the Saber Staff, as he dueled Malgus as well as Darth Vindican, telling us that he instructed Satele how to properly wield the lightsaber. Although after Derek's death, Satele Shan would go on to be trained by a different master, one who was more geared for diplomacy. Satele always carried with her her trusty Saber Staff. When her second one was destroyed by Malgus during the Battle of Alderaan, Satele would go on to construct a third, refusing to surrender the design. Satele Shan was not only a phenomenal warrior, but one of the best Grandmasters because she was trained essentially to be one. Satele was naturally aggressive and fiery, having a deep passion for justice, leading some to believe that she could one day embrace the dark side. Rather, instead of hiding away that aggression and fiery nature, her master taught her to embrace it and to fuel her aggression into compassion, later learning diplomacy from another master. And that, my friends, is why Satele Shan's lightsaber is so important, and how Satele became one of the greatest leaders in the Order's history. But now, my friends, what are your thoughts on this lightsaber and this lore? What are your thoughts on Satele Shan's power and her role as Grandmaster? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives and the channel today. May the Force be with you, and I will see you in another holocron.